Welcome to Generations, a show which helps people 50 and better lead happy, healthy, and productive lives. Here's today's moderator, Nadia Giordana.
Hello and welcome to Generations, the Roundtable Edition. I'm Nadia Giordana, and co-hosting with me today, first off, we have Gloria Van Demeltraat. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm delighted to be here today. Eager to hear our guests.
It's great to have you here. And Caryn Sullivan.
Thank you, Nadia. Yes, it is great to be here and to see all of you and share with you the information that we're going to learn from Caryn.
It's always fun.
Yeah.
And also Ellie Freed. Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Nadia. I'm very glad to be here and excited about our topic.
I am too. And of course, we have a very special guest today. We have Caryn Sullivan. Caryn is an author. She is a contributor for the St. Paul Pioneer Press and also WCCO Radio, as I understand.
Yes.
And we're going to be discussing today the topic of preparing for the inevitable and living in the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have you here.
Thank you.
Caryn, I've got the first question, I guess. I love the title of your book, Bitter or Better, is really intriguing. Could you tell us what the catalyst was for you to do this book and to put this information into a book form?
Sure. Well, as Nadia mentioned, I've been writing as a contributing columnist to the Pioneer Press for many years now. And after a time, people started saying, well, you should write a book. And so I started out initially compiling columns that I had written, starting with the first ones that I wrote about autism. And I like to say I have the alphabet soup of all sorts of topics that are timely, that I felt needed to have some attention paid to them to raise public awareness about them. And it's all about dealing with the tough stuff in life. Because everybody's got tough stuff. And I know that well because starting at a very young age in my life, 8 years old, as I mentioned in my memoir, my mother ran away with her lover and took 7 children between the two of them to Puerto Rico, where we lived for 2 years. I didn't see my father for over 2 years. It was very traumatic. And that sort of was the beginning of many difficult things that I faced, including losing my parents by the time I was 23, going through breast cancer treatment. I have a son who's now an adult who has autism, who happened to become the bone marrow donor for my daughter when she underwent a bone marrow transplant, which followed my own breast cancer treatment and preceded my husband's death from a heart attack. So there has just been this long line of things. Right. And I always just went through life very myopically, like whatever it is, tell me what it is and I'll deal with it. But after I lost my husband, and he was 54, and I was 51, leaving me with these 4 children, one with special needs, a blended family, I found myself sort of on my knees. And while I was extremely grateful to so many people who had been so kind and generous to me and my children, I was also feeling wounded because not everyone rallies in a crisis, and there were people who didn't come through for me and my family in ways that I expected they would. And so I had quite a chance encounter in April of 2010 with a priest at a St. Thomas Academy function. And I posed this question to him, sort of the universal questions of, why has my family dealt with all of this, and why did the good die young, and why will these other people live forever, and my husband was taken from us so early. And Father Johnson's response was, quite clear, but so powerful. It really was life-changing, and I know that can sound like a cliche, but it is so true, because what he said to me was, Caryn, I can't tell you why all these things have happened to your family. I can't explain why this, happened to your husband, why he died so young. All I can say is that in the face of adversity, we all have a choice. We can be bitter or we can be better. And I really refer to that as my North Star. And it is the guiding light for me in my life now for everything from the smallest little issue that I might be dealing with to the biggest question about where should I take my career, or what to do with my adult son, or whatever it might be. And so the book evolved from that and became a compilation of my story, but I braided into my stories of many people who I'd written about for the Pioneer Press who had also experienced adversity but rose above it and had done things with their lives to help other people. So it's Mary Jo Copeland, who is obviously very well known. Author Vince Flynn, who I had written about several times for the paper, and he had responded to one of my columns with a note that I use as the foreword to the book because it's very inspiring to me, which is you have what it takes to write the book. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, you'll save yourself thousands of dollars of therapy. So I proceeded with the book, and it's just, really all about, topics like how to live the best life. It's not an instructional kind of thing, but it's the wisdom, collective wisdom of a lot of different people who have dealt with difficult times. And it's about, what kind of legacy are you going to leave?
And a lot of things happen to people, and like the things that happen to you, some things you can't possibly plan for or prepare for. What would be some of the things that you actually can do something about as far as at least being moderately prepared for?
Well, it's interesting, Nadia. When I speak, because I'm also an inspirational speaker, I talk about how so often we live our lives in, denial, disregard, and even defiance of the one thing we know is going to happen, right? We're all born with an expiration date. And yet, we sort of sheepishly read the obituaries because it's such a negative thing, to be contemplating or focused on death. But, what I discovered in the darkest of moments was that, there are decisions that we all have to face. And it is so much easier to do it when you aren't sleep deprived, you aren't in a state of shock, you aren't grief stricken. And it's things as simple as the one issue that I was telling you earlier, my girls and I had to grapple with, which was, okay, Ted always said when he died he wanted to have his ashes scattered at Lambeau Field, being a hardcore Packer fan, but was he serious? Or was that a joke? And there were very different opinions in the family, and we ended up burying him at Resurrection Cemetery in Mendota Heights, and I bought a plot for myself and for my son, who has special needs, because it was such a wrenching conversation. I didn't want my kids to ever have to go through that again. So that's a pretty straightforward one, but that requires you to look, mortality straight in the eye.
Yeah, true.
What other ways do you teach people in your book about how to prepare for the end, prepare for days that we might be ill, sickness that might be coming?
Well, it can be anything from, as I've mentioned, I have a son with special needs. Well, we had to go through guardianship, and we had done that when he turned 18, but that's a really important one for any families who have a loved one who is going to need conservatorship or guardianship. Get that in place when people are have the capacity to address those issues. Just organizing the documents. We had things here and there, and I didn't even have like a list of the life insurance policies. 3 months after my husband died, I got an a letter in the mail. It was a premium notice for a life insurance policy that he had taken out through the State Bar of Wisconsin. He was a lawyer. And I called and I said, well, my husband died. And they said, well, you have a life insurance policy with us that's intact. I didn't even know about it. I often will take the mail and in my car in the garage go through, this goes in recycling, this goes in the house. Just think if I had tossed that,
Yes.
But more importantly, if we'd had a list of everything in one place that was easily accessible, then I wouldn't have had that surprise. So that's another one.
And I think updating documents too.
Right.
Because my husband and I were talking about it just this morning, and we realized we have a safety deposit box at US Bank. We haven't opened it, looked in there for probably 15 years.
Right.
And we got a letter from an attorney out east where we lived, and he said, we haven't touched base with you for 20 years. And I said, oh my goodness, that's way out of date documents that could be very, very important to us.
Right. You know, my mother-in-law just died, and so my husband had predeceased his parents, which is not what you would expect. And they had an annuity. And on the annuity, it says that the shares are to be divided among the living children. Well, I don't know if that was like printed boilerplate language in the annuity or if that was their intent, but that's the kind of thing where you have a major life change like that, you should go back and take a fresh look and make sure that the documents that you have prepared accurately reflect your intent and your desires at that time.
Absolutely. Funeral pre-planning, too, is another area that needs to be thought about. We don't like to think about those things, but
Right.
my own husband passed away, and at that time we did the funeral pre-planning, and it gave me such peace
Yes.
that I didn't need to be concerned about that, or my family didn't need to be concerned. Do you address that in your book?
Not specifically. That might be something in the next book, because there's going to be probably more of these lessons. But you know, another family example where my husband's aunt died at 101 years old, and at the memorial service, her son and grandson were talking, and her son said, "I don't want any of this. When I go, I just want you to have a party on my birthday." And his son, who's not quite 30, said, "Oh, no, Dad, let's not talk about that now." And I said, "You know what? This is precisely the time to discuss that, because who would have ever thought that that's what he wants? And moreover, you should put that in writing so that this one conversation's not forgotten about. Because if you really love your family members, you want to honor them and, sort of say goodbye to them in the way that they would want you to do that. Who wants to be left speculating about it?
I think another good thing to do is list all of your possessions.
Right.
We have things that belong to my parents and my husband's parents, and if we don't list them and say what the memories are with that item, they'll just, they would probably give them away.
Right.
I think knowing that there's a special emotional attachment
The
to something.
story with the item, that's an important point.
This year, when I took the Christmas tree down, I took all of my mother's, and maybe some are my grandmother's, I don't know, ornaments off the tree and put them in a box, and I'm dividing them up between my 4 children. I'm not going to specify any particular kind. I'll just close them up so I don't know who gets what. But there are 3 little clamp-on birds, old birds, with this like whisk broom type tail that comes out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give those to my little granddaughter who comes every year to trim the tree with me.
Sure.
Oh.
But, little things like that. And my dad worked for the St. Paul school system, and he has a doorknob. He had a doorknob that said St. Paul Public Schools. Real fancy doorknob with a figure on it and lettering. And we have that on our front door, and I made a note in there. Take that doorknob off, and one of you take it and put it in your house.
And as Nadia just mentioned, writing the stories down about each of those ornaments or each of those precious items would be just going a step farther. That would really make it meaningful to your family.
Yeah, I was just thinking the other day, there was something in my jewelry box, I don't remember what, but I thought, yeah, I've mentioned who this goes to, but I never said anything about the reason. It means something. And so that's a very important
It
point.
is, yep.
My grandmother and my mother were really good about passing things on and doing it when they were totally capable of making the decisions, totally capable of telling us why
Mine were
and
good
what
about
it
that
was.
too.
So I started that, quite a while ago with my children, because we were moving anyway, so you might as well take advantage of the opportunity and, unload some stuff. But, but they were really happy,
Yeah.
to
Oh,
get
I'm
it.
sure.
When,
Yeah.
I took my parents' first set of dishes, Fiesta, back in, the 1940s, and I split it up with the kids, you get this half and you get this half, and they just love those dishes. They're colorful, they're
And you
wonderful.
get to see the look on their face. That's nice.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's a good plan.
I do too. When there's people have said that when there are funerals, when people die, that the children don't fight over the really expensive, important things. They fight over the broken teapot or the
You've heard that, yeah.
dented pan in the cupboard or something. So having those things written down, who they go to, is really
I
a
think so,
wonderful
too.
thing to do for your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's true for the small things like the dented teapot, but it's also important for the big things like the lake home.
Oh, yeah.
What's going to happen, when the parents are gone and you've got children who've enjoyed that every summer for as long as they can remember? Is there a plan? Does everyone know what the plan is? Is it documented? Are the documents accessible? And that's true for so many things, because anyone who's lost one knows how exhausted you are afterwards, and to have to run around to different banks and try to get, authorization to withdraw funds if you're not on the account, or change title to the cars, whatever. The more things that you can have that are just streamlined and simple, the easier it's going to be for your loved ones, and then they're going to move forward and they're going to enjoy life more. But I also have found that by dealing with a lot of these things, I'm just unfettered now. I don't have that gnawing thought in the back of my mind like I did for the longest time, because until I really came to grips with all of this, I was so afraid to execute a living will, because the living will, unlike even a will, is like, I like things black and white, and there's a lot of ambiguity there. Well, okay, so if I am in a coma and they say, well, there's a 10% chance you might be able to recover, do I want them to, put into place, do not resuscitate order or whatever it would be? It's irrational. But 4 months after my husband died, our dog died of heart failure. And that was the most wrenching decision I had to make, was to say, okay, it's time, here, take her. And so that was the tipping point for me on the living will, because I thought, I don't want my kids to ever have to make that decision about me. And I can't tell you how much more free I felt afterwards. Like, I just didn't have guilt about, if they'd have to make that decision because I didn't have the courage to do it myself, or just, I don't like loose ends, and that one's now
that's
taken care of.
That's such an important point, is once you get your plan in place, whether it be the will, whether it be these private lists that you do, all these, the conversations that you have with your family, then you can relax.
Yes.
And live in the moment, as you mentioned, I think you mentioned it in your book, and be able to enjoy life with a sense of satisfaction and relaxation that you maybe wouldn't have otherwise.
Right. Really, with the peaceful heart is how I look
yeah.
at it. And there are so many ways that you can do that. I talk with people all the time who have gotten to that point where I'm an empty nester now, and what am I going to do? Well, so much of what I've done in my work is to shine a light on nonprofits, and we know that Minnesota is such an incredible state with all these nonprofits that help people, again, the alphabet soup, every imaginable type of need is addressed. And, like what you're doing with writing letters to
Legacy
people who are in
work, yeah.
hospice, the
Yes.
legacy work, how gratifying is that?
It's wonderful. It's wonderful for me to provide that for families and to encourage it. And also, I teach others how to write their life stories, and that is a real passion of mine now. In leaving their families such a legacy. And I think, Ellie, what you were talking about, writing stories, my mind has been working since you just said that. That's something I need to add in my little class about writing down the stories behind the ornaments or the special pictures on the wall or the things that are going to your families.
You
Yeah.
should connect. I used to work for the Minnesota Hospice Organization,
Oh.
and they're a wonderful nonprofit. You should connect with them.
I do. I write stories for hospice patients.
Yeah,
now.
but I mean,
Yeah.
they might be able to give you some leads, you know,
That's a good point.
because they were
Great point.
thinking about doing that before I retired.
But leaving a legacy is incredible. And what you're saying about you had a peaceful heart. That little, when you just said that, that struck me so much, and I thought how beautiful of you to have done that, and now providing this wonderful book to help people, inspire them to do the same thing. It's terrific.
Yeah, I think it allows you to feel comfortable to do some of the things that you might want to do, which might be volunteer work, which might be travel. I think you mentioned going on an adventure,
Yes.
different things that you might want to do when you don't have to worry about these other things.
Right. And you feel sort of entitled. Yes. One of the best things that I did was I went on a mission trip with Smile Network and actually, helped with the patients and then wrote about that, included their story in my book. And then in 2015, I went with a group and we walked the El Camino, 80 miles on the El Camino.
Is that the one in Spain?
In Spain.
And so that was a goal I set for myself, and I had to train for it and get ready. I had the camaraderie of being with these other people. I got to see a new part of the world. I was benefiting an organization that I'm passionate about. So, it hit on a lot of cylinders, and it's something that I'll always remember that, I made happen for myself. So.
We were fortunate in our family because my mother lived at Lingblomston, and when she became a hospice patient there, the hospice team was formed for her, and then the pastor took it upon himself to write up a biography of my mother's life.
Oh,
And they did that because they wanted the team, the hospice team, to know her and to understand where
How nice.
where
What
she
a
had
beautiful
come from.
thing.
And we had the bits and pieces of the history, but he put it all together. And from somebody's point of view, not a family member, but somebody with a real spiritual sense, it was wonderful. And then when we got to the end of her life, there we had, something to share with many people. And
Did they share that with the staff as well?
oh yes,
Because I'm thinking that's a wonderful way for people to get to understand that these little old people in nursing homes have a rich life, a rich background.
they had lives
Yeah.
yes, that's
That's-
exactly
and a
what
wonderful
they did.
history.
That was the reason why they did it. And actually, the pastor went to quite a bit of trouble to contact, family that wasn't immediately in the area and so on, to get as much information as he could. I mean, he
nice.
really did a good job.
Yeah.
And, and then her team could use that background information on her.
Nice.
That's
How
wonderful.
thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father is in a nursing home and he has Alzheimer's. But a few years before he lost his memory of his life, I transcribed his journals, and those were published into a book. Well, hospice helpers at the nursing home have been reading, like The Notebook, have been
Yes.
reading his book to him.
Oh,
And
isn't that good?
It does brighten him, and we can say, I think he's remembering, or he's certainly enjoying the stories, and it's what he loves the best. But it was real heartwarming to have that happen that way.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah. So legacy and memory and memoirs are a good thing. Has anyone here actually, well, you wrote a memoir. I wrote a little mini story. Have you written a memoir?
No, I haven't.
You should do that. That might be a
Yes, you
fun thing to
should.
do. That might be your project to do in
I
the
know
next
someone who
year
can
or
help
so.
you do it.
Yes, Gloria, you can.
It is, it's so important. Have you done it? Have you done it,
No,
Karen?
no,
No.
I haven't.
I've journaled a little bit, but, so I could go back to that, but.
Oh, yeah, a lot of things can be taken from journals, and just journaling itself is a legacy piece for your family. That's another thing that family members might argue over, is the actual journals.
That's right.
Sure.
That's a good point, yes.
Yes, they always remember things a little differently than actually happened.
I noticed that. I noticed that. And when questions would come up, my father journaled for 27 years. He would say, "Let me check my journals." And he'd have the date. He'd even have the weather of that day written down. There could be no arguments about the incident when it happened. It was written down that day and when it happened.
Funny.
And for a detailed journal like that, or one like I do, which is only maybe a little paragraph each day, it still helps. And those are still memories that family members don't know that you did on that
Yeah.
particular day.
Every once in a while, one of my kids will come and say, tell me this, some episode that happened to them as a child. And
They're
it's
eager
not
to hear
anything
it.
like I
Oh,
remember
you need
it.
to do that, Ellie.
And
You
family
need
stories
to do
are
that.
remembered differently.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
By different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Well, it's-
important family stories are, and it's just the way the brain saves the memories. It's different with different people.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
always say we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we
As
are.
we are, I've heard that.
And
in my
it
family.
is so true. So we all remember things differently. And when we write about, in my own memoir, my sister remembers everything totally differently. She's 11 years older. So she grew up in a different family.
Every bit is true, just different.
Yes, exactly. We all see it the way
that
we
funny?
lived it.
Yeah.
I had
Well-
a similar response from my siblings. That's not exactly how I remember it. Yeah. That's your story.
I'm glad to hear that, it happens to everybody.
It does happen to everybody. Well, this has been wonderful, ladies. Thank you all for being here. Gloria
Thank
and
you.
Karen
Thank you
and
for
Ellie.
sharing your story.
And Karen, you too. And thank you all for watching us today on Generations, the Roundtable Edition. We'll see you next time.